Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The two verses that we're going to recite now are the invocation verses for Srimad Bhagavatam. So before reading the Bhagavatam, it's very good to recite these two verses. Our Guru Maharaj always used to do that, and often devotees will be doing that before giving class. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya mudiriyat.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto non-Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author.
Nasta preshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhakti bhakti nistiki.
By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. So today I wanted to, I'd like to greet the devotees. I'd like to also seek your good wishes and your blessings on this journey we're going to start today. It's a nice, sweet, long journey through the Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam is one of the most incredible scriptures. What I wanted to establish today is why the Bhagavatam. We've been to the Bhagavad Gita and we know the nectar in the Bhagavad Gita. But where Bhagavad Gita stops, the Bhagavatam begins. So I wanted to just give a brief hint to devotees about how special the Bhagavatam is. We have so much literature. The Vedic literature is immense. And there are so many scriptures to choose from. So why did Prabhupada pick Bhagavatam? So I wanted to go, it's a long answer to that question. I hope devotees can bear with this class because it is a little bit intense, but it shows you the vastness of our culture, of the Vedic system, and it shows you the importance of what we are going to be endeavoring to do, to dive into the nectar of the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam. So just to give a taster, I wanted to actually do one verse, the first verse from the Bhagavatam, just to recite it, to recite the Sanskrit and speak the English. And other than that, we're not going to look at the Bhagavatam today. So this is the first verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasya to Anvayaditira Sarvechu Abhigya Vishware Tene Brahma Hidaya Adhikavaya Muyanti Yat Surya Tejovari Madam Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Amrasa Dhamne Svena Sada Nirasta Kuham Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water, sin in fire, or land, sin on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. Meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
This is an extraordinary verse. This is just the first verse. And there's 18,000 of these. Only joking, actually. This is probably one of the bigger verses. It's the invocation. And it's said that this is actually an extension of the Gayatri mantra, because there are a couple of words in here which indicate that it's part of the Gayatri. Dhimahi. Whenever there is the word Dhimahi that appears in a mantra, usually it indicates that that is a Gayatri mantra. Gayatri mantra is a very powerful mantra. Of course, we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is the most powerful, but Gayatri also assists us along that journey. Why do we say that where Bhagavad-Gita leaves, Bhagavatam begins? Bhagavad-Gita's one of the final instructions is Sarva Dharma Parityaja. Give up everything, Arjun, and surrender unto me, and I will protect you. Give up all different types of dharma, religion, faiths, just surrender unto me. So if you see the very first line, O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. That's indicative that the speaker has already surrendered himself unto Krishna. And that's why it is said, the Bhagavatam begins where the Bhagavad Gita finishes. And this is why it's regarded that Bhagavad Gita is like the ABC study of spiritual life. And the Bhagavatam is the graduate study of spiritual life. And now here, after the Bhagavatam, we have Chaitanya Charitamrita. But let's focus on the Bhagavatam. So the rest of this verse there's so much. I remember Guru Maharaj, he was giving class on this verse day after day after day for a few weeks. There is so much information just in this very first verse. And Prabhupada's purport is huge, explaining this verse. But we're not going to go into the detail of this verse. What I was going to do was focus on why, in the first place, are we looking at the Bhagavatam. I mean, this already gives a very strong indication as to why we're looking at Bhagavatam, because there is so much information in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The focus is very clear of the Bhagavatam. And we'll see that the focus of Vedic scriptures, it can be very different. So this is a little idea of the vastness of Vedic scriptures. We have two types of scriptures we'll talk about in a little while, Shruti and Smriti. One is heard and the other is remembered. One is heard because the speaker will speak the Vedas and the listener will hear. And the other one is great sages who remember wonderful events or wonderful pastimes or instructions, and they're written down. And we'll talk about the differences between Shruti and Smriti. We also will look at what is Shruti, what is regarded to be the scriptures which are in this category of Shruti, what are the scriptures that are regarded to be in this category of Smriti. And we'll have a brief outline look at all of these different scriptures. A very brief outline look. This may be a little bit confusing and a little bit intense, but I'm not going to dwell too much into these scriptures. I've sort of done a little write-up explaining in brief what the scriptures are saying, basically, or intending to say. And then we'll also look at this side of the picture and the different Puranas. We've got quite a lot of details. And one of those Puranas is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, okay, let's make a start. And if at any point anybody wants to ask a question or stop me for any particular reason, please do feel free to do so. I'm happy for questions to come in the middle, as we're going along. And any comments, anything that you'd like to share, no problem with that. Two types of scriptures. So Shruti are those that are heard, the revealed truth. They consist of revelation and are unquestionable. And they're eternal principles. And generally they mean the Vedas, the Upanishads, and we'll see that in a while. Smriti is that which is remembered, the realized truths, the supplementary, they help explain the Vedas in more detail. And they may change over time, depending on circumstances and time. And they're only authoritative as long as they confirm what the Vedas basically say. Smriti is derived effectively from the Vedas. And they are scriptures such as the Itihasas, the histories, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and the various Puranas, which we'll look at in some detail, hopefully. So one question can be asked, what is Bhagavad-Gita? Because Bhagavad-Gita was spoken directly by the Lord, and yet it is within the Mahabharata. So actually, the sages, the previous acharyas, they say that the Bhagavad-Gita is both Shruti and Smriti, because one is Shruti because it's spoken by the Lord. Whatever is spoken by the Lord is eternal, it's unquestionable, and it's revelation to us. And that's what Bhagavad Gita is, as we know. There's so much nectar, eternal nectar in the Bhagavad Gita, which never changes. And it's Smriti as well, because it is within the Mahabharata, which is an historical fact that happened. And it was written down by Vyasadeva. So that's an example of a scripture which is in both categories. And sometimes that there is a little bit of interchangeability between the scriptures, between these two categories. But I'm not going to dwell on that in any way because it's not really relevant. The Vedic science is vast. Nothing is left uncovered. For somebody who's in search of reality and looking for the truth. But it covers all aspects of life. Even if somebody is not looking for the truth, the absolute truth, the Vedas will assist everybody on their journey. So whether one is at the beginning of one's journey and want to still enjoy material life, or one is at the end of enjoying material life and wants to begin the spiritual search, the Vedas encompasses and embraces both types of people. So that's why the Vedas is extremely wide. So there's four types. There's the Rig Vedas, which is Vedas of praise. There are lots of hymns, mainly praising the Devatas, Indra, Agni, Surya, mainly worshipping. The worship is directed towards those Devatas. Of course, Surya can also mean Surya Narayan. Surya Narayan is expansion. It's called Satyanarayan or Savitur, as we've been discussing before. So that is, of course, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Parts of the Rig Vedas, they deal with this, the Soma ritual, which is enjoyment in the heavenly planets. One of the aims of Rig Veda is to bring the follower to the next level. So if somebody is enjoying in this world, the Vedas will direct them, okay, you can enjoy in this world, do good karma, and go to the heavenly planets and enjoy there as well. So these hymns are chanted by 4 priests, for example, who conduct Vedic rituals. And they will invoke the Lord. These priests would be, of course, nowadays it's not possible, but they would be chanting these mantras very accurately in order to produce the result. If the mantras are chanted incorrectly, They won't give the desired result, but they might even give something very undesirable. So the Vedas are generally spoken by the Brahmins, learned Brahmins, because these mantras are very powerful, and if spoken correctly, in the right tune, in the right pronunciation, they will give the appropriate result. But if done incorrectly, then they will give perhaps an opposite result. Hence why, in the age of Kali Yuga, these Vedas are not easy to practice, because nobody now is really qualified to chant these mantras correctly. The Purusha Shukta, which is a wonderful prayer, which the demigods always recite when they go and ask for assistance from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Very beautiful prayer. They are in the Rig Vedas, in the 90th chapter. These, most of the Rig Vedas has been lost, and most of the Vedas have been lost, but there are little snippets still available, which give us some clue as to their grandeur, their incredible status. The second Vedas is Yajur Vedas. It's a Veda of rituals. Again, lots of branches. Samhitas means prayers, lots of verses, lots of mantras. They're primarily used by priests to perform different types of rituals, like the Ashwamedha or the Rajasuya, or these are different ceremonies which were performed by the kings or by the royalty. So again, not so relevant in this age. Samaveda is another Ved, and Sama means melodies. These hymns are very melodious, and they most of them come from the Rig Vedas, how to sing them nicely. And we'll see later on how there are different limbs of Vedas which assist with the pronunciation and the singing. Atharva Ved, this is the fourth and the final Ved. The Ved of chants contains prayers, spells, incantations, a little bit like black magic, if you like. Also discusses, has a lot on wisdom and description of the soul and the Supreme Lord. The four Vedas mainly deal with material elevation, as we were discussing. So we've come from the spiritual world, but we've come to enjoy in this material world. So the Lord will allow that within prescribed rules, and the prescribed rules are given in the Vedas. But of course, Lord Vishnu is the Lord of material liberation. He gives freedom from this world. So most of the sacrifices and rituals that are given in the Vedas are directed towards the devatas, the demigods, the servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedas represent the accomplishment of highly developed religious system and encourage satisfaction of material desires through the worship of the demigods. So it's regulated. They contain many directions for increasing one's power and position, or reaching the heavens in one's future by performing particular sacrifices in worship to the devas. So question might be asked, why are there so many gods in the Vedic tradition? Actually, there's only one God, but there are many agents of that one God. They're called demigods, who assist in managing the creation and the natural forces that exist in this world. When these demigods are approached properly, then they will grant the worshipper various facilities. They will grant their wishes. And these demigods, the names that we talk about, Indra, Surya, Agni, they're all actually positions occupied by various highly elevated souls who are servants of the Lord. And when those pious credits are accumulated by the performer, the worshipper, then they will also perhaps gain these positions like Indra, Vayu, Surya. So these are not imaginary figures. They actually do exist in helping the Lord administer the universal affairs. Why does the Vedas mainly teach karma kanda, i.e. how to become materially more progressive? Well, the karma kanda section is meant to actually, the rituals are meant to actually purify our minds and actions, not just meant to help us acquire wealth. It's a step-by-step progress. By having faith in the performance of the ritual, one establishes purity in one's habits. And gradually, over time, one's desires, when they're worked through, they become purified. And eventually we get rid of our material desires and we try to aspire for higher levels of spiritual reality, activity. That's the whole idea of karma kanda. Wherever one is, the Vedas will try to bring us up to the next stage. So unless we do understand that, we might miss the point and might remain attached to the rituals and to the material success that we achieve. So in this way, it was recommended that people could perform sacrificial rituals to obtain their desires. But by the performance of such acts, we should understand that we're dependent on not just the devatas who are giving us these gifts, but also to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is himself supplying the devatas. So do devotees, those who are interested in cultivating spiritual knowledge, do we do karma kanda activities? No. Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, men of small intelligence who are given to worldly desires take delight in the flowery words of the Vedas that prescribe rituals for attaining power, riches, rebirth in heaven. Their goal of enjoyment, that's all they know, that's all there is. Krishna also further goes and explains that if you worship a particular devata for these temporary and limited fruits, Krishna will actually make you faithful in that devata. So you go towards him. But the problem with that is the whatever the devata is giving is actually coming from Krishna in the first place. And if we worship the devatas, then we go to the devatas. After we leave the body, we will go to their planet, which is still in this world. Whereas if we worship Krishna, we will go to the spiritual world, from which place we never come back again. It's out of this material jurisdiction. For one who has begun to endeavor for reaching the supreme goal of Vedic knowledge, the prescribed duties in the Vedas for worshipping the demigods are unnecessary. One who is fully self-realized, there is no duty or need to perform the prescribed duties found in the Vedas, because he has no purpose of material desires to fulfill. So we're very fortunate. We can bypass the vast majority of teachings in the Vedas. So we've looked at the four primary Vedas. Now we're just going to have a quick look at these things here. Brahmanas are for grihasthas. The Aranyaks, that's for the Vrinaprasthis, those who have retired from work and are engaged in some spiritual activities. And then you've got the Upanishads. Everybody will be familiar with the word Upanishads, which are meant for those who have renounced life. And after that, we'll have a quick look at the Upavedas and the Vedangas. Time is sort of running out already. So Brahmanas, what are they? They are various compositions, again, to actually help the understanding of the Vedic philosophy. They give stories that explain the reasons for performing these Vedic rituals, just to give more faith to the performer. The Aranyaks, they are a little bit more intense writings, which are meant for those who have renounced actually all materialistic activities and they've retired to the solitude of the forests. So these are a little bit more intense. The Upanishads, now the Upanishads actually are to help understand the Vedas, to continue the spiritual progress of the individual. Vedas encourages worship to demigods for material needs, only hints at the prospect of spiritual realization, liberation. But the Upanishads, they start to explain how these worldly attachments will just bind us to this world. We have to become renounced from them so that we can surrender to the Lord. So what does Upanishad mean? Shad means sit down, upa, near, and ni, Upanishad, means with determination. It means basically the student sits at the lotus feet of the spiritual master and listens to the teachings. There's 108 of them. In fact, there's a lot more. There's 108 prominent ones. And then out of that, there's 11 which are even more prominent. I think devotees will have heard of Kena, definitely. Mundaka, we've heard of. Chandogya, we've heard of. And this one especially, Shvetashvatara, where it describes the size of the soul. So mainly these Upanishads focus on the Brahman aspect of the Lord, like the formless aspect. Most of the Upanishads will focus on the impersonal form of the Lord as opposed to the personal form. And the Upanishads can describe the Lord in ways which can be quite confusing. For example, in Isha Upanishad, it says, the Supreme Lord walks and he doesn't walk. He is far away, but he's very near as well. He is within everything, and yet he is outside of everything. So we've come across this concept in the Bhagavad-Gita, the inconceivability of the Lord. But the point is not that the Lord walks and doesn't walk. That because he doesn't have a body. No, actually, he doesn't have a material body. That's why he doesn't walk. So the point is that the Absolute has spiritual legs to run or walk with, and spiritual senses that are not limited like material senses. So this is referring to the material aspect. It's ignoring, in fact, the spiritual aspect. So the Upanishad sometimes can be a little bit difficult to understand. And generally, as I said, they tend to reflect on the Lord being in an impersonal form. But there are wonderful Upanishads which explain the nature of the Supreme Lord. There's this Gopal Tapani Upanishad, which we looked at when we were looking at the Gayatri Mantra. Sri Krishna has no birth, no old age. He's always in his adolescence without any change. He is ever most effulgently shining so gloriously more than the sun. He is fond of remaining with the divine cows of Golok Vrindavan. He is eternally fond of being with the Gopals, cowherd boys, as he feels pleasure tending the cows. He is the very object of the Vedas. He is a super soul, ever dwells in the heart of every living being. He is the only sustainer of all. He is the beloved sweetheart of you all. There's a wonderful from that Upanishad. And then there's the Radhika Upanishad, not so well known, but explains even further about Krishna. I won't go through this because we're a little bit running out of time, but I will share these notes so you can, in your own time, just go through them as you like. And then there's the Chaitanya Upanishad, which describes the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. So we've looked at the prime Vedas and these aspects of the Vedas, which give a little bit more explanation of the Vedas. Then we're looking at we have a very quick look at the Upavedas and the Vedangas. I'll just briefly mention them. Upavedas basically is there's 4 types. In fact, there's more. Most of them are lost. Basically means they're following the Vedas. And the one that will interest us is Ayurveda. Ayurveda has not been lost, although some of the original texts have disappeared. Ayurveda, the system of healthcare, is still somewhat intact. It's one of the Upavids, which follows the Vedas in terms of its practice. Vedangas means limbs of the Vedas. And there's 6 limbs. They help understand the Vedas. The 6 limbs, in very briefly, are Vyakarana, which is Sanskrit grammar. If you don't know the grammar, you're not going to understand the Vedas. You're not going to be able to read it. Nirukta, which is explaining the words. Shiksha, correct pronunciation. Okay, you've got great grammar, but if you can't pronounce the Vedic mantras, then you're not going to get very far. The chandas, what melody, what meter are you going to use for these mantras? That's also very important. Like we know for Gayatri mantra, there's a particular meter to chant that mantra. If you don't chant it in that meter, you may not see any benefit. Then there's Jyotish, which is the science of Vedic astrology, and Kalpa, which is the intention of the rituals. What are the intent? What are the intention of the application of the Vedic texts? So these Vedangas help from again to follow the Vedas. So most of what we've seen, the Shruti scriptures, the Vedas, Vedangas, the Upavedas, they don't give much knowledge about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His pastime is in Golok Vrindavan. And that is one of the reasons why there are the Smriti, which assist the Vedas in explaining the very important aspect of the personality of Godhead. What the Shrutis will do, it'll give knowledge of the futility of material existence, temporary nature of the material existence, how we are bound in this world, our natures, God's nature, the goal of life, it will also explain, and how we have to get out of this. But it won't give any particular detail of where we're going to and who the Lord is and how beautiful, how sweet he is. Not any particular detail. So then we look at, now I'm going to go a little over. I hope that's okay. If devotees don't, if we want to continue next time, please do indicate. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind just going through all of these so that it's out of our system and we understand why the Bhagavatam is so important. Because as you can see, up to now, there's hardly any discussion in any of the Shrutis about Krishna's personal power, apart from a little bit of reference in the Upanishads. So we've got the Sutras, and also they include Nayana and the Vedanta Sutras. Again, these are it's written in code, especially the Vedanta Sutra is written in such a concise way. That you got all types of spiritualists writing commentaries. But the Vedanta Sutra gives this wonderful verse, Atato Brahma Jignashu. So that Prabhupada quotes a lot, that I am spirit soul. So that's a very, very good direction that the Vedanta, the sutras take us into. Itihas, the historical accounts, stories which help us understand the Vedas, understand the meaning of the Vedas, include the Mahabharata. It's a huge composition, 110 slokas, verses, and gives so much wonderful information. I won't go through any of this detail. Similarly, Ramayana. These Itihas have been accepted by all the great acharyas, Ramanuja, Sankaracharya, Madhavacharya. And these Itihas, as well as the Puranas, are regarded as the 5th Veda because they give so much application to the 4 Vedas of the principles stated in them. And the Srimad Bhagavatam also states The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately. But the historical facts, the authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas, are called the 5th Vedas. So that gives us an idea how important the Itihasas, like Mahabharata, Ramayana, and the Puranas are considered as good as the Vedas. Let's go into the Puranas. The Puranas are, again, they're historical accounts of what's happened in the universe. Generally, they will have 5 subject matters: the creation of the world, destruction, the genealogy of the kings that have come through and the demigods, the Manus, the Manavatars, this different solar system, the dynasties in the solar and the lunar side of things, and descriptions about the incarnations of God. So the Puranas generally will have those 5. If they don't have those 5 minimum, they're not really going to be regarded as authentic Puranas. There are 18 secondary Puranas. We've heard of a few of them: Naradiya, Varuna Purana. And then there's 18 Mahapuranas, the most important Puranas, of which 6 are in the mode of ignorance. It doesn't mean that there's no knowledge in them. It means that those Puranas are for those devotees of the Lord who are in the mode of ignorance, and how they can progress into the next level. So as I said before, Vedic knowledge encompasses everybody. Nobody's left out. 6 of them are in the mode of passion. So again, if one is in the mode of passion, those scriptures, those Puranas will help that person move to the next level up. And then 6 are in the mode of goodness. And one of them is the Bhagavad Purana. But actually, as we will see, the Bhagavad Purana is regarded to be in the mode of pure goodness, not within this world. Even the mode of goodness is within this world. But when it's pure goodness connected to the Supreme Lord, it becomes out of this world. Very quick review of these Puranas, 18 of them. The Linga Purana talks a lot about Lord Shiva. 11,000 verses, mode of ignorance. Kanda Purana talks about the son of Lord Shiva as well, Kartikeya, as well as other things. Loads of other information is there. 81,000 verses. This is the largest Purana. It's a lot of verses. And it talks about how to worship Shiva, the austerities of Parvati. It talks about Lord Vishnu, almost as if he's one of the demigods. Agni Purana, 15,000 slokas. Descriptions about Ganga Mata, astrology, knowledge of Brahman, the impersonal form of Lord. And then the art of bhakti is also described. Matsya Purana, again in the mode of ignorance, 14,000, describes universal creation, different dynasties, Ikshvaku, Surya, Chandra, different aspects of worship, how to fast on holy days, pastimes of Lord Shiva. Generally, the Puranas which are more of ignorance, they will be geared towards Lord Shiva. The reason being, Lord Shiva is so merciful, so kind. He will give shelter to anyone who comes to him. Kurma Purana, again, in the mode of ignorance, 15,000 verses, and again, different descriptions, the greatness of Kashi, where Lord Shiva resides, and other places. Shiv Puran, or sometimes it's called the Vayu Puran, 24,000 verses, describes again different lordships, demigods, manvantaras, incarnations, Narmada River, and a detailed account of Lord Shiva himself. Then the next 6 Puranas are all in the mode of passion. Brahma Puran, 10,000 verses, includes stories of Ram, Krishna, Surya, Parvati. Brahmanda Puran talks about different kalpas, the holy places of Naimisharanya. Bharatvarsh, another name for that holy place which nowadays known as India. And talks about different manus, a creation and annihilation of universes. Brahma Vaivarta Puran. We refer to this quite a lot. Why? There's 129 chapters which talk about pastimes of Radha and Krishna and how to worship him. This is quite a powerful Purana, 18,000 verses. It talks about Golok. When we looked at the abodes of the Lord, we refer to this Purana quite a lot. It talks about Brinda Devi. It's a very sweet Purana. Markandeya Purana, 9,000 sloks. Bhavishya Purana, mostly lost now, but Bhavishya Purana had a lot about future kings, future mankind, 14,000 verses. Bhavishya means future, so it predicted a lot of the events of Kali Yuga, etc. Vaman Purana, 10,000 sloks, talks about Daksha, Durga Mata, Bali Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj. Varaha Purana talks about, yes, now it's more of goodness. Why is this more of goodness compared to the other ones? Because, again, these Puranas assume that the practitioner is on a higher level of consciousness. Just like the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you remember the first sloka, is such an incredible sloka. It already puts you on a transcendental platform. Even just the first sloka. So here, different aspects of the holy sites are mentioned. General Vedic philosophy is discussed. Narad Puran, we discuss this quite a lot. 25,000 verses. 4 Kumaras are, their teachings are described in this Purana, as well as all the different holy places. And there's the appearance and activities of Sukadeva Goswami, who spoke this Bhagavatam. We'll see that quite a lot. Most of the other Puranas will refer to this Srimad Bhagavad Puran, because Bhagavad Puran is such an important Puran. Garud Purana, we've talked about that last weekend, about the journey of the soul, where Garud, the carrier of Lord Vishnu, asks Lord Vishnu about the poor living entities living in this world. What is their journey? So we went through that journey, the journey we want to avoid going to Yamlok, but we did it virtually. Padma Puran, again, quoted many times, 55,000 sloks, a huge Puran. And there's lots of nectarian verses there. It talks about Krishna in Vrindavan. Vishnu Puran, again, predominantly talks about Lord Vishnu and his pastimes, but also the descendants of Prithu and Priyavrat. These are also described in the Bhagavad Puran. And then finally, we come to the Bhagavad Puran. Bhagavad Puran is also known as Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is Srila Vyasadev's own commentary on all the Vedanta philosophers. So he wrote all of the Vedas, he wrote the Upangas, the Upavedas, he wrote the Sutras, he wrote the Ityasis, he wrote everything. He wrote the Puranas, but he was still not satisfied. Something was wrong, something was missing. And his spiritual master, Narad Muni, came to see him. And Vyasadev showed his concern. And Narad Muni immediately told him, what you haven't done is you haven't glorified exclusively Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So then Srila Vyasadev understood, and he wrote the Srimad Bhagavad Puran. So in this Puran, we have not just the different aspects of the absolute truth, because that's all in all the Puranas, you'll have those 5 or 10 subject matters, but he also describes the personal characteristics of Sri Krishna. There's 90 chapters in the 10th canto, which exclusively talk about Sri Krishna. And not just about Sri Krishna, but his devotees, but also about the personal character. What is he like? How sweet he is. It doesn't elaborate on the worship of other demigods or on rituals that a word temporary material benedictions. So, as do most of the, all of the Vedas, but most of the Puranas also do the same. Therefore, Bhagavatam completely transcends all other philosophical viewpoints of Vedic literature. So where Bhagavatam will take us is on the absolute platform of pure goodness. This is the beauty of the Bhagavatam. And that is why Srila Prabhupada spent years and years translating the Srimad Bhagavatam, middle of the night. One time he was sitting on one verse. It took him, I don't know how long, but quite a long time. His disciples asked him, Prabhupada, why are you still on this one verse? Prabhupada said,
One word.
One word. Prabhupada said, I'm just thinking about the right way to translate this one word. So you can imagine he spent blood and sweat and tears compiling these purports on this Bhagavatam. And we are the most fortunate because Bhagavatam is so easily accessible now. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he is the grand spiritual master, great grand spiritual master of Prabhupada. He spent years looking for an authentic copy of the Bhagavatam. Years. And we have it on Vedabase. We have it hard copy, easily accessible. But unfortunately, it's always gathering dust. So the time to clear the dust, get the book open, and we can
drink the nectar.
Drink the nectar. Thank you. You know I was going to say that. And here it is. This is the 12 cantos. We want to go through all of them. Of course, we are just going to go do an overview. I'm hoping that devotees will be inspired to read whilst we're doing the overview, if possible, if you have time. But definitely an overview will assist to have a little inkling of the nectar of this incredible scripture that we really want to look at. And great. Sorry, I'm going to stop now. There's a whole load more. I just want to give you an overview of the glories of the Bhagavatam, because there's so much of it, just to understand what are we actually getting into, together with an overview of the 12 cantos, what is in the 12 cantos, overview of the overview, if you like. So I wanted to stop there, and Madhusudan Prabhu, you can share some realizations.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Nabi. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Sri Guru Maharaj. Yeah, all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. That is to come. Well, you having done all this research into all the different Puranas and the Vedas, and we've gone through Bhagavad-Gita, and Krishna is mentioning some of these Samaveda, Rig Veda, and Krishna says of those Vedas, I am the Samaveda, and like that. And you just made me realize how much I've been missing out. I need to go back to all these Puranas. Take me lifetimes, I think, to go through all those kind of Vedas. And I'm glad I don't have to get a PhD or a degree or in all these different things. But just to, I've made some attempt trying to do a little bit of Sanskrit, but that's even hard to understand the grammar and but it's good to know, because Sanskrit, from word, you can break it down, like you said, Upanishad, you can make out what actually it means. So it helps a lot, knowing the grammar and the grammatical, the right way to pronounce. And there's so much actually, but, I'm born with a Kali Yuga mentality, and my brain cells are half dying away now, and I can't comprehend all these different Puranas, but it's good to know that we just got to refer to what Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, which is, the 15th chapter, where Krishna says, Vedascha sarve aham eva vediyo, Vedanta krit veda vid eva chaham. Chaham, meaning that's me, I am. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So I'm not going to remember any of those Puranas. If I do try and go and read them, by all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I'm the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna is saying, I am the compiler, I'm the knower, and in the end, the conclusion is me, Krishna. But as you mentioned here now, we are fortunate that we can actually get a glimpse of all the different shastras. Forget about trying to understand the material. If you want a degree in engineering, that's hard enough. But anyway, Srimad Bhagavatam is what is going to expand and give us the nectar. And, having read Srimad Bhagavatam before, and there's so much in it that will answer a lot of the questions for us and give us a right direction. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually emphasized so much that Srimad Bhagavatam is the purest of the scriptures. And, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself recommended that we just stick with Srimad Bhagavatam. And there's so many nice commentaries written and all that, but Prabhupada has made it so accessible. His purports are amazing as well. So look forward to that, actually, Navi. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. And the beauty is, actually, we don't have to look at any other scripture. No, forget all the other Puranas, forget all the other Upanishads, forget the Vedas, because this Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy, because it is subject matter, is the absolute truth, which, while non-different from the spirit soul, is the ultimate reality, one without a second. The goal of this literature is exclusive devotional service, bhakti. And today, actually, I just wanted to introduce again this wonderful devotee here called Lee. So I hope I haven't blown your, you're muted actually. I hope that I haven't put you off. We still can't hear you. You're still on mute. Let me see if I can do it this side.
That's it. No, you haven't. I mean, I'm just amazed at your knowledge, to be honest.
Oh, I'm good at cut and paste. It's all cut and paste.
It's a phenomenal amount of knowledge, but it's just incredible how much there is there in the Vedas. Just incredible.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to spending more time with you, and maybe we can work together on some aspects. So
that would be nice.
Thank you very, very much for joining us. Really, really good.
The amazing thing about Nabi, the Vedas, is that so much of the Vedas were actually, like you said, they were lost or taken away and all that from India. And different rulers have come, India has, well, even if 5,000 years ago, the Srimad Bhagavatam will mention that there was just one emperor for the whole planet was referred to as Bharatvarsh. And everything was very, very unified, but that's 5,000 years ago. But over the years, the Vedas, there's so much science within it that when the different so-called rulers came over India, they took a lot of these Vedas. The bits of the Veda they took were referring to the military science and the scientific and technology and all that. But the cream of the Vedas which is Srimad Bhagavatam, was quite well in the hands of acharyas like Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that wasn't that easily accessible to people, who had different intentions. And that's why there was so much military progress by Germany, when they took, and they still emphasize the study of Sanskrit, don't they? So, yeah, okay, go on. Yeah, thank you.
As you really made a fantastic point. Beauty is Prabhupada has brought what they forgot to take.
Well,
So this is the beauty of Bhagavatam, isn't it? Prabhupada brought it. Actually, I just wanted to ask any devotee, Vaishakhi? Are you there, Vaishakhi? Okay. Anybody, any questions, any comments before we move on to the next part of the session that we're going to do? Okay. Thank you very much today for bearing with us. A little bit more bearing with us next time as well, because we're going to, again, not go into the Bhagavatam as such. We just wanted to make sure we're completely grounded in the glory of the Bhagavatam before we actually dive into the Bhagavatam. So I hope that's okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Prabhu, I got disconnected by mistake. You were calling my name.
Was that okay? I hope I didn't put you off.
No. I think it's because the phone was in my pocket. That's why.
Okay. Did you hear the discourse?
Yeah, I did hear everything. Yeah, about all Puranas, Vedas.
Okay. And it was okay?
Yeah, it was okay. Yeah. I'm really glad you are sharing a too good knowledge. Like, of course, we are from India and we know so much things, but it is very detailed, very detailed.
Yeah. Oh yes, we have. We're not even scratching the surface. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and looking forward for us to do this journey together. Huh?
Yes. Sure, Prabhu.
Thank you very much. So tomorrow, just to let devotees know before we